Thank you so much, to each and every one of you, for first of all, taking the most difficult step in the journey. Does anyone know what that is? People are like getting up, brushing your teeth. Close. Showing up. How about showing up? So, to each and every one of you in this room, you took the most important step in the journey, which is to show up. So, not only thank you for me, which I do appreciate, but pat yourself on the back and thank yourself, because you've already started along your course of the journey of transformation. As Stephen talked about, and just a quick bit about Stephen, and thanks again, Stephen, Concordia, for inviting me here this morning. What a great turnout, and just everything about working with you has been phenomenal. Such a great academic institution that you have fostered and harnessed here. Stephen and I started a relationship actually about 4 years ago now, when he probably didn't even know who I was back then. Probably still doesn't, but regardless. I reached out to him, and I was writing this book called Intrapreneurship, which, by the way, to Stephen's credit, still is just indecisive on whether that's a word or not, by the way. At the time when I was writing the book, the word intrapreneurship, literally on the internet in particular, Webster's dictionary, anywhere you went, it was unsearchable. It was not a word that was recognized in the English language, basically, at the time. And I'm thinking to myself, well, should I even write this book then? Is anyone gonna read it or whatnot? And I thought to myself, why not, right? Maybe this is exactly what people need. Fast forward, obviously, a couple years later, now it's a term that is starting to catch on within the corporate context, right? It is, to Stephen's point, it is the entrepreneur within the corporations of today. At the time, as I mentioned, I reached out to Stephen and I asked him to read the book, to review it, see if it had any legitimacy in the market, right? If he'd write a testimonial, if he would just take a look at it with his eyes. And again, several years later, he reached back out and he said, hey, we're doing this Business Insight Speaker Series, and we'd love to have you come and speak. And I was like, sure, yeah, why not, right? So I just wanted to, again, give thanks to Stephen for inviting me out here this morning. When we talk about, transformation, it's kind of like a story of going through all the phases, all the emotions, right? And I'm reminded of a journey that my better half and I, which she's back there in the back of the room, her name's Naomi. I was out in Barcelona. She was actually out there for almost a year in total, because it was part of her mission to go study, actually I say study abroad, but to do a project abroad, to do a real life working project. She's, a beauty professional, a beauty educator, if you will. And she was going and helping, multiple salons over there. I went and visited her, and we went to Tenerife, Canary Islands. And in Tenerife, there's this majestic volcano that you can go and visit. It's a little bit of a drive, and you have to be committed to drive the windy roads. And by the way, the roads and the car situation there is very challenging. I can't tell you how many accidents we almost got in along the way. But it's one of those journeys that is worth taking. And we're going up this windy road, and imagine for a moment that you enter into this part of the journey of your trip, right? And it was actually a morning kind of like today, to be candid. If you look outside, everyone, it's foggy, it's hazy, you can't see anything. You need your high beam headlights on, because we're entering the rainforest, right? You can't see much, but you know that your destination at the end of this trip is going to be worth it. So you keep going, you keep plodding. And this is a long, windy road, right? And the next climate we get into is it starts to open up a little bit. The canopy starts to open up a little bit. and you start to see little rays of light start to shine through, kind of like what we see here in Southern California when you see that marine layer finally start to burn off in the morning, right? And we're still driving, and it must have been at least 30 minutes, although it felt like forever. I was starting to get car sick personally. We had to pull over a couple times along the way, but we didn't stop. We kept going. And finally, we get above the canopy of this forest, and all of a sudden it turns into desert. So all the trees and all the vegetation's now gone, and it's desert. It's sand. It's like that silt sand that you can run your toes into at the beach, just a couple miles down the way. And then we see this beautiful mountain, what we thought was a mountain, which was actually a volcano. And this volcano, as you can see, was perched right above the fog, right above the marine layer, right above the clouds. Our destination, which was that volcano, which we actually drove all the way up to the volcano, and we got some souvenir little coffee cups from which we still have to this day to remind us of that special trip. That volcano is representative not just of our trip, and maybe some of the trips that you all may have taken that were similar to that. That volcano is representative, and this journey is representative of the journey many of you are going through, have gone through, or will go through in your life, whether personally or professionally. And I'm here to tell you this morning that you have to stick with it. Whatever your destination is, whatever it is, keep going, keep going, keep going. And when you feel like stopping, keep going. Maybe pull over for a little break if you have to throw up. But keep going. That's what this is about. And that's what's going on in today's market. So keep going. So I want you to remember that as I talk here this morning. So what am I going to teach you? Or hope to teach you, rather. 3 things. I'm going to keep it simple. I only have a couple slides that I want to share, and the slides are really only there as backdrop. I'm not one that's going to sit here and read off of them or whatnot. I'm probably just going to tell random stories along the way, too. So stay with me along this journey that we're going to take this morning, okay? First, what's the first step to transformation? Whether you're transforming yourself or you're transforming an organization, what's the first step? You must master yourself. Mastering self-awareness, okay? Second, if you're going to master, an organization, leading a group of people, what's the next step? Well, the next step is mastering servant leadership. Now, I am just honored to be here this morning speaking in front of not just any group, but this particular group, because I know this group is just marked with servant leaders in here. I know you all are, right? It's something embedded and ingrained in the DNA fibers of institutions like Concordia or Pepperdine, where I personally got my master's, which I know there's some Pepperdine folks around here today, or service. In fact, if there's anyone that has served any of the armed forces, which I know I personally have invited a couple of them, would you mind standing up for a moment, please? People like those have mastered servant leadership at its finest. And I'm honored to know some of you. Stephen, thank you for coming. Chris, thank you for coming. Eileen and Alex, also thank you for coming. Servant leadership. Finally, architectural alignment. Once you can master servant leadership, what can you do? You can take not a step back, but I like to say it's kind of like going from ground level to soaring like an eagle, where you can see the whole landscape then. And that's what we're talking about. All right. Moving along. Before I get into some more content, one thing I just wanted to point out, because I get this question a lot. People are like, okay, Justin, this cover art, what is it about? Have some of you asked I'm okay with it, by the way. Raise your hand if you want to know what this cover art's about or you're trying to figure it out. Okay, you're not being honest. Okay, yes, there you go. The reason I chose this was very specific. You notice this picture on the right here? That's Da Vinci. Da Vinci's golden ratio. You want to know what's interesting? Look at this. He found a way to measure out all the perfect measurements, or at least back then what they thought were the perfect measurements of a human being in terms of length of arm, length of legs, torso to body ratio, everything, right? So when we're constructing and architecting something, think about architecting a home, architecting an organization, very similar. You want to architect it with care, right? So I think about that sort of thing. Well, in his golden ratio, there's something called a golden spiral. And what do you see there? Golden spiral. See, the golden spiral represents your ability to transform in the best way you possibly can from the inside out. Interesting. Something to think about. Mastering yourself. What do we need to understand? Basic needs. Basic needs. Human basic needs. The same as water, food, shelter, love, emotion, connection. You name it, right? Basic human needs. Everyone in here, well, hopefully you got food or drink or something, because otherwise you'll starve or you'll go of dehydration, right? Your body can go roughly 21 days, Chris, you could correct me if I'm wrong, just living on water, because we are primarily water as humans. And you can go, 21 days without, as long as you have water, right? Food is different. So these are basic human needs. But we also have human emotional needs, and that's what these are representing, right? And here's the thing. The reason for a bullseye is because the bullseye is contribution. This goes back to the first slide, which is around servant leadership and working, as I like to say, up the stacks. And by the way, I'm the kind of person who talks and I'm going to move around. So if I bump into you, I apologize in advance. Contribution. Because have you ever met someone, and maybe you felt this way, I know I certainly have, that you do something and you do something great and you do something well and you've achieved a lot in your life, or maybe with a particular organization or a business. But have you ever had that feeling like of unsettledness where there was something more, something different that you were supposed to do? Do you know why? It's because as humans, we're not designed to be hamsters on the hamster wheel and just keep achieving and achieving and achieving. Achievement is part of the stack of human needs, but that is not the destination. Contribution is. Why do you think people like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Richard Branson and Oprah, and the list goes on, why do you think they're so successful in the public's eyes? Oh, by the way, they have a lot of money and they're worth a lot. And that's not the point of this. But why do you think that is? Because they figured out what all the rest of us haven't figured out yet, which is that when you lead from a place of contribution, guess what? The rest of it follows. They're not out trying to serve their own internal needs or needs of low-level needs like certainty and variety and significance. They're out saying, how can I contribute to make the world a better place? Period. And that's it. And they're fulfilled. So when we talk about basic needs, this is essential. I want you to remember this. The second part of mastering yourself is identifying your personal map, okay? There's a lot to this. I'm not going to go through all of this, but there's several things. Okay, for example, your global belief systems. What did you grow up with in your household? What were your beliefs? What were your standards that were set for you? Perhaps by you, your grandparents, your parents. This is usually something that's embedded in the DNA fabric of your household, for example, right? Identity extends on a more personal level to that. That's why I've represented that with a fingerprint, for example, right? What is the fingerprint? What is the fabric of who you are? Primary question. A couple people out in the hallway, they're like, I hope you do a good job speaking, because otherwise, what are we here for? Well, I agree. I agree. By the way, this image is taken from Rick Warren's book, Purpose-Driven Life, which if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it, especially since we're talking about a group of religious servant-based leaders that are here today. In that book, he asks the question over and over and over again in many different ways, which is, what am I here on earth for, right? Why am I here? That's the primary question. There's a lot of secondary, tertiary questions that go on and on, but that's something that you have to be able to answer, because you can't be self-aware, you can't know who you are until you can answer your primary question. Make sense? Good. Values, we talked a little bit about that, but integrity, honesty, are you about teamwork? Maybe you are money-driven. That's fine. That's part of your value system. At least know who you are, though, right? Rules. Rules are things that you must, without question, live by. What are the things that you must do, not want to do? I call the want to do people wantapreneurs. Yeah. Keep wanting to do it. By the way, a very similar parallel to that word is try. I'm going to encourage everyone in here to eliminate the word try from your vocabulary. As many of you already know, trying is doing something with the intention of failing. So eliminate it. Vehicle. I chose a Ford Fusion here because that just happens to be our personal vehicle. Over the years, I've actually had several different vehicles. I've had all the fancy ones, the BMWs all souped up, the rims, the blacked out tint, the this and the that. And then as I started to go through my own transformation, I realized what I was really about. By the way, it's soon to be a Tesla. But representative of me, hybrid, right? Being dynamic, being able to balance between different environments, different people, different settings, but eco-friendly a little bit to some extent. Leads from a purpose-driven center, though, right? And somewhat frugal and humble at my core, right? These are just some of the many principles that I try to live by as part of the vehicle by which I drive in my life. And then finally, situation-specific beliefs. These are things regarding, certain situations. Maybe you've come across them where it's like, hey, I came across this really tough situation. The way you behave in those situations, by the way, is going back to the beliefs. So you're going to operate in that way based on your belief system. So it's your duty, going back to it's your duty to shift your beliefs in order to get the desired outcome, to get to the destination that you want. I'm going to keep using that the whole time, don't worry. And what's underpinning the whole thing? External environment. By the way, traffic conditions and everything today was affected by what? The external environment. Things that you cannot control. That's what the external environment is. Case in point, okay? Last thing about mastering yourself, there's another great book by Dr. Vance Caesar, who actually happened to be one of my professors at Pepperdine. It's a very short read, too, like my book. My book is a very short read. It's meant to be concise, to the point. High Achiever's Guide to Happiness. Did you know that only 12% of all high achievers in the world are happy? Does anyone know why? Bingo. That's strive for continued enhancement and perfection. It's a disease. It actually is a disease. Is what makes them great. A little activity you can do at any point in time, by the way, is it's called the I get, I give bucket. Who fills you up and who depletes you, okay? So, for example, if you have a mom that, maybe like my mom, who, likes to talk for a long, long time on the phone, and it's like, Mom, I love you, Mom, but I have like a million things I need to do. So, you know what? You learn to manage those relationships in a way that, hey, Mom, you know what? You're just calling to check in because I love you. I just want to let you know right now that I only have about 5 minutes to talk. Again, I love you. What's going on? Phase shift it back to a present moment conversation. And you can have a very present, very impactful 5-minute conversation with someone. Or 30-second, or however long it is. But that's what I'm talking about. Interesting exercise to do, though. So the exercise is simple. On a scale of 0 to 10, figure out how much you feel like you get out of that relationship. Assign it a score, 0 to 10. Then, how much do you give the relationship? I'm giving a certain amount. And you just do the math. It's really simple. And you can quickly see who fills you up and who depletes you. For those who fill you up, keep investing with those people because they have something to offer you. And for those who deplete you, manage the expectations accordingly. That's all I can say about that. So now we're transitioning to mastering serving others, all right? The first part of that is mastering market stickiness through what I like to call the X factor. Now, I'm not a self-proclaimed marketing expert. My better half probably is much better than, actually not even as probably, she is gifted in this area, okay? She knows how to market her business in a way that I still aspire to, but I'm learning from her every day. What is it that people that market their business, market themselves in a way with that X factor that makes them unique? Well, the first step is kind of going back to the transformation journey that we're talking about along the way, is they eliminate fear. They eliminate any fear, doubt, or uncertainty with what they're marketing and how they're marketing themselves or their business. Because until you get past that roadblock, everything else is going to be jaded, and it's going to be like you wear a mask that isn't who you are. So who really cares? And people don't want that. People buy, and people want to buy from people they know, like, and trust. And the only way you can get to know, like, and trust someone is by that other person and by you having a reciprocal relationship where you're vulnerable with one another. And that's one of the most difficult lessons for people to learn and to overcome. The second part of it's inbound marketing. Busy little graphic there, but this is just, and it can be online and it can be in person. It doesn't matter. How are you creating your systems and your gears and your levers in a way that you have incoming traffic, web-based, in-person-based, whatever it might be, where you have inbound marketing. Lead generation is what the old school term is. Inbound marketing, call it whatever you want. If you create the right business, your business should be working while you sleep. And, income streams like residual income become very real. Brand clarity. All right, so now you've got leads coming in. Who are you saying who you are? Brand clarity. You have to know who you are, and you have to be, another good word, congruent. Who you say and who you are has to match how you behave and what you do and all of that, right? Which is why I made the point a couple slides ago about the car and whatnot, is because when you're projecting one thing and you're doing another thing, that's incongruence, right? Subconscious appeal. The most important thing of how you market your business and yourself in order to achieve success and market stickiness is subconscious appeal. What is it that brands like Amazon, we have some Amazon in the room here, woo woo, or Apple, or Google, or Nike, or Chick-fil-A do and do well? They understand how to market to the subconscious mind, also called the unconscious mind. Nostalgia. They put ads, they put promotions, they do things in a way that brings you and I to a place, usually in childhood, where life was great, where there was no worries, and all you wanted to do was go to the ice cream truck man that's playing his song when he comes down your street and get your little ice cream cone and run through the water on a hot summer day. See what I just did? I just created nostalgia. For some of you, anyway. For some of you, it's a little different than that. But that's what I'm talking about with marketing stickiness. Business forces. So, now that you understand how to market your business, what's the next step? You have to craft the business. You have to master crafting in the business. And this is a progression, and this is a very intentional graphic of a stair step. Because until you hit the first step, you can't get to the last step. You can't skip the steps. You skip the steps, you miss. You fall off the ledge. You don't want to fall off the ledge. Business mapping, you must map your business. You must map it out. The business that you map must have a compelling vision. It must be a vision that people see, that they align with, that they want to be bought into. The congruency factor that we're talking about, okay? A role alignment. Oh, this is so huge. Early on, when I started my first business, this is a concept I didn't understand, and I failed at miserably. And you know what I thought? I thought I could be everything to everyone and do everything and wear every role and wear every hat. And some of you today, this morning, are here because your businesses, they might be succeeding, they might be struggling, but I know some of you in here, because I was you, you're trying to wear all the hats, aren't you? So, 3 roles. Write them down. First role, artist. What do I mean? You need a Michelangelo in your organization. No, that's not what I mean. Artist. Who are some of the most commonplace artists of society today? That's a literal thought of it. And yes, graphic designers, logo designers. Let's talk about people that you might think of, or that you might know of, that are artists. Listen to these names. Steve Jobs, artist. You're going to say, how? He was an idea guy. He just cared about creating amazing stuff. He had other people around him to build the business, part of it. He just wanted to make the most beautiful, stunning looking, amazingly functional products on the planet. Elon Musk, Tesla, PayPal, SpaceX, Richard Branson. These are names that you would recognize as artists, okay? So To be a successful organization, you must have an artist in your organization, also known as an idea person. Second, you must have an entrepreneur. I don't understand. What's the difference? Wasn't Steve? Yeah, okay, there's overlap. I'm letting you know there's overlap. But these are the three roles. These are the three hats. These are the three people you must have. You can start out wearing all hats, but I promise you, your business will never take off to the level you ever imagined it in your wildest dreams. It can get there. The only way it's going to get there is if you have at least three people serving these three roles. So entrepreneur. This is your person that can take the idea person's idea from conception and productize it, monetize it. Now we're talking about money. I'm sorry, we live in America. There's this like little form of energy exchange we do here. It's called currency. And pretty much every other country across the planet does it too. That's the exchange of energy, okay? Entrepreneur takes the idea from conception and helps monetize it. Third, leader manager. These are usually ops people, although not necessarily. In a small business setting, they're usually ops people though. But leader manager, they're able to take the monetized SKU or product and operationalize it in a way that maximizes profits, outcomes in society, right? Yeah. So interestingly, I'll give you another Apple example, just because I think a lot of people at least know who Apple is in this room, or I see a lot of iPhones on the table, so I figured that many of you do. Tim Cook, not an artist, not even a little bit. He's an ops guy. He's a supply chain guy. He is a manager leader. He brought in Ivy, and Ivy's the idea person. Ivy's the artist. And he talks so eloquently. I mean, when I listen to that guy, sometimes I'm like, wow, you just make me want to listen to you for hours. That's the artist now. It used to be Jobs. It's now Ivy. And that's why Apple still works, because they get this. That's why any business works. Even when they go through transformations, even when the founders and owners and CEOs die, they can still live on. Fine-tuning, and finally, proactive forecasting and lifecycle management. What do? They know how to proactively forecast and lifecycle management. You should be able to predict your business to a T, without a doubt, all day, every day, no matter what. And finally, the last stage, architectural alignment. So in my book, a lot of the backdrop of it, I borrowed from a book called Pendulum, and it's by Dr. Drews and Roy Williams. It's another great book to pick up. And what they talk about is the cycles. Who would agree in here that everything comes full circle? What was old is now new again. I'm sure many of us have heard these euphemisms, these expressions. And why are these relevant? They're relevant because there are historical cycles that society has gone through that proves that to be true, right? We happen to be what they'll talk about in the book and what I also talk about in my book, an upswing of a we cycle, which is why everything is about tribes, it's about community, it's about connection right now. If you go back to the 80s, it was a much more individualistic society, built on command and control, superheroes and things of that nature. Now it's a much more community-oriented world that we live in. So make sure, however you're architecting your company, at least for the next 20, 25 years, they predict or they forecast based on, again, historical swings going back hundreds and thousands of years, which have proven to be true, architected in that way, because that's the trend. That's what's going on. And maybe you fall within one of these generations, right? I think what's interesting is this transfer of wealth that we're seeing right now. Of the baby boomers and the millennials, and obviously I'm personally a millennial, so I resonate with that, cohort, right? Some of you might be one of these others on the list here. This is the largest generational transfer of wealth that our society has ever seen. It's between 2020 and 2024, depending on who you talk to, is like this tipping point that's going to occur within economics, where the millennials are going to actually finally have more generational, buying, purchasing power, and the like. Why is that relevant? Because many of you in here, again, with your businesses, are building businesses based on old thoughts, on old principles, on old standards, and you're failing to look ahead and see who is really going to be running your business and who's going to be buying your business. And that's what you should be paying attention to. Let's talk about dominoes. Who in here has played dominoes before? Show of hands. Good, everyone, awesome. Who in here has played dominoes, not the actual game, I don't even know how to play the game personally, but who has played dominoes in this way, where you set them up? Show of hands. Oh, good, everyone as well, cool. Architecting your organization, and you're going to see this very clearly in a moment, is just like a game of dominoes. If you don't align the dominoes in exactly the right fashion to where they all can knock down, if even one's off, the whole thing will crumble. House of cards. Except in this case, we want the dominoes to fall down, right? What do I mean? Well, I know this is a bit of an eyesore, and I promise this is the only slide like this. And we're almost done, by the way. So this is representative of a process that I take a lot of organizations through. It's a 14-step process where we evaluate 14 different facets of an organization, from everything from your organizational goals, as you can see, all the way down to your information systems. It's a very thorough evaluation. Why is this important in going back to dominoes? Because if you don't have the dominoes all aligned, it doesn't work out. So this is actually a mock-up. If you can see, I know it's a little bit lighter on the screen with the lights and whatnot, but I took a nonprofit through, okay? It happened to be a nonprofit I work with in LA for a little bit, and I worked with them in a consulting capacity, and we went through this process. And what did we find out? Well, we found out they had some A's, they had some C's, they had some B's, right? Why does that matter? They're wondering why they're struggling, why they're hemorrhaging, why no one listens to them, why students were bringing guns to school. Some very serious, real issues going on. And they're wondering why. And it's because they were misaligned. Who here's gone to the chiropractor before? Yeah. I love that. I love that sound. It's like, all right, I'm tuned up now. Whew, much better. So, here's what alignment looks like. We determined in working with them that this is where they belong. This is where they desired to be. So we adjusted all the rest of their strategic initiatives, these 14 strategic initiatives, to align with the ACOM, and guess what? 6 months later, they're operating at a high level. They're in news publications. They're doing phenomenal. They're growing. They're not dying again. They're growing. Okay, that's why misalignment. So just to bring this all home, we're all in a very interesting place in society right now. Society, business world, everything, right? And right now, this term, intrapreneur, which was once something that no one really understood, and still, by the way, in a word processor, it's a squiggly line, so no one really knows about it, is now a very real thing. I personally have lived this journey at Cisco, among other companies, right? And I want to encourage and invite each and every one of you, whether you're here today just for personal development purposes, or you're here today as a business owner that's looking for a couple tips or tricks, or you're here with a corporation and you're just looking for something to take back to your teams or your respective departments, whatever the case might be, I encourage and invite each and every one of you to figure out who your entrepreneurs are. Foster them. Attract them. Retain them. Do not let them go. Do not force them out. Do not tell them not to be the next Tony Robbins when they like to go up and talk like this in front of a bunch of corporate executives. By the way, who loved me, who I have testimonials for days from. You know why? Goes back to the vulnerability, goes back to the connecting with people and all the things that people really care about. Right? Howard Schultz's book, it's not about the coffee, it's about the people. Figure out who your entrepreneurs are. See, now I'm already messing it up. Figure out who your entrepreneurs are and harness them into your organization. Oh, sorry, I did have to share just a little something personal and get vulnerable for a second. If you have picked up a copy of the book prior to today, and many of you probably noticed that the book was not sold, and there's a very distinct reason for that. And I'm going to share that in a moment. It was the first edition. As I told Stephen coming in, I was like, yeah, we actually published the second edition recently. If you read the first edition, you notice some very distinct things throughout the book that are no longer in there. For example, there's mentions of wife in there and things of that nature. Yeah, so, you know, I obviously am divorced. I'm a divorcee or whatever they call it, right? So I have a failed marriage. But that didn't define who I am. Like the story I talked about at the get-go, it's about continuing to go. My vision is so strong for what I know I'm destined, my why of why I'm here on this planet Earth is so strong that I'm stopping at nothing. So, you know, why? What is my why? I love to speak, as you can see. I love to connect with people. I have to coach. The have to, must, and wants. I have to coach. I have to connect with people. I have to help you learn. This is our dog, Nala, by the way. Nala's a bulldog. She's a cutie. My better half, Naomi, who's in the back corner of the room there. I want to say a special thanks to her for being there along with me every step of the way. When I didn't have much of anything, by the way, coming on the heels of a divorce, literally had everything taken from me, this woman stood by my side. I literally had nothing. I was sleeping on my best friend's floor, on a mattress on the floor for about a year while she was in Spain, and we did long distance and we made it work. That says a lot about her. She gave me that fuel, that motivation I needed to, candidly, to get back going again, right? Because, like, imagine, like, you get knocked down so far down, what do you do to get back up? And she was that for me. And then, obviously, my parents, they're amazing people. They both live in Texas. They've just been there every step of the way for me. You know, if you have parents or grandparents or whatever like that, you know, honor them. You know I don't do this enough, by the way, but do so. That's the core, that's the foundation of what we were talking about earlier. Connect with me. I know some of you have asked how to find or get a hold of me and whatnot. Connect with me. This is my website. I'm just going to take a brief moment, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Stephen to show you where to go so you understand, because we just relaunched, by the way. So for those of you that do go to the website, there's basically an assessment. Take you less than 5 minutes. It's a couple short answers, and it's a couple multiple choices. And on there, if you take it, by the way, it's kind of fun to fill out, right? And complete the consultation with me, free, quick 15, 20-minute, free conversation. I'll personally send you a copy of my book, okay? So that's why I wasn't selling books this morning or giving away books, is because I want to connect with people on a much deeper level. And in order to do that, there's a bit of a process to that. So let me just show you real quick so you all know where to go, because it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to see it. Here's the website. As you'll see from the home page, here you go, right? You can hit the X, go to connect, and then you'll see, I'm only looking for serious people, right? But if you're one of those, right, there's kind of 3 classifications. Just pick the one that best aligns with you, by the way. If you're like, well, I might be this, or I might just pick one of them, it's fine. The questionnaires and the assessments are very similar, and they're not long. Again, it's 5-minute type process. Business coaching, where I'll personally work with you in a three-month type of program. Organizational consulting, obviously, I'm working with you and your organization. And then motivational speaking and training, have me come in and maybe do something like this for your organization, for your event, which I know I've already talked to some of you about as well. That's where you go. You click on one of these 3. It'll automatically prompt the pop-up with the assessment. That'll get submitted to me, and then we'll set up some time to review it, to review your results, and to just chat. And that's it. And then I'll make sure you get a copy of the book. So does that sound all right to everyone? Awesome. All right. Again, I want to thank you all very much. That's actually all I have for today. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to be a part of such a good group, such a great institution. Thanks again, Stephen and Mel and my team that's here today, just in support team here with me today. I really appreciate it. And again, don't stop now. Don't quit. Keep going. Keep going. Because the destination of that volcano, for whatever your volcano is in sight. Thank you, everyone.